Good day. My topic today is a bit different. It's on the transformative aspects of online teaching. So my topic's titled Pedagogic Transformation Through Learning Space Disruption. Now, we need to look at this problem in its context and how the online and blended learning environment could catalyze redress and transformation. And this is a very critical issue in South Africa. Now, despite progressive changes in higher education institutes, there's a critical mass of practitioners who are excluded from the mainstream higher education system, and these we refer to as the missing middle. Now, these persons who are actively engaged in industry don't have the time for formal education, which is the norm, as they have to face daily struggles for survival in an inequitable economy. Many of these practitioners are from historically disadvantaged communities. So full-time studies is not an option. It's not a viable option for them. Professional education in South Africa, therefore, excludes these communities, and it is accessible really to the privileged. So there's this increased gap between privilege and deprivation through the education system. Now, when one looks deeper into this problem, we could associate this kind of mode to a mode 1 type of knowledge production, which Gibbons et al. Refer to. And because it's confined in discipline, norms, canon, and generalized acceptance of what a learning community should look like, be like, and perform like, and its related quality standards. So it's generally controlled and bound within institutions. The impact of such mode is that it controls thinking in silos. It's very self-referential, and what that does is it critically excludes lived experiences and existential knowledge in complex and diverse multicultural contexts, like we have in South Africa. So if learning, conforms to that mode, how then do we work together in industry if we don't learn together? That's a critical question that we have to address. Now, this leads us to a question: what can alternative learning modes do about this critical problem? And when we're talking about alternative learning modes, it's also about blended and online learning. And here a reference is made to John Dewey. And we look at his elucidation of the engaged learning paradigm and his emphasis on the value of lived and real life experiences, where he criticized schooling for being exaggerated and not really being part of the course of living. It's not supplementary to the course of living. Now, this raises a critical issue of the intrinsic connection with knowledge to culture and society in context, which then raises questions of the learning paradigm in this context, this complex system situated in communities. And when engaging with these kinds of issues, one is forced to actually, in a good way, forced to look at the reflection of place and how learning is situated in place, but consciously and also subconsciously. And from this kind of experiential paradigm of learning, it starts to kind of promulgate a self-directed learning paradigm where critical scholarship becomes part of a process, and to then reflect again upon how knowledge is relevantly situated in community, what is its value and its meaning to society, and how the lived experiences of persons engaged in the knowledge community relate their lived experiences to their learning. A reference is made also to a critical reconstructionist perspective, which looks at knowledge and skills for agency against oppression and social injustices. The entire system at the moment is fraught with social injustices. So the proposition is an alternative mode 2 paradigm, which is actually inclusive of heterogeneity and transdisciplinary practices that includes multiple intelligences and experiences. So it is pedagogically inclusive. And it's inclusive of epistemologies of the South. Critical to this paradigm is the acknowledgement of diversity and then flexibility of modes, pedagogic modes and media for learning. So it's a complex paradigm, and it includes multiple worldviews and place-based knowledge systems. So the essence of transformative pedagogy as a concept is two things: pedagogic inclusion, but related to that is place-based knowledge and how that fits into pedagogic inclusion. So how can the online environment, stimulate new critical communities of learning and practice? And it is through disrupting geographic disconnection and affording various opportunities for intercultural collaboration through shared and contested lived experience, and this can be across the global knowledge society. I want to briefly discuss a case study that I was actively involved in, and this is the Master of Architecture through a rule called GR7 at the university, whereby practitioners in practice who have developed competence can access higher learning programs. Now, what the online learning platform did, and this was introduced in 2021 during lockdown, it actually broadened the professional masters cohort in architecture, as we had practitioners who became students who could access our program from all over the country and beyond our borders. So that was a very important difference in this cohort, because we had multiple perspectives and engagement from various different lived experiences and intelligence in the program. We found that the missing middle or late career practitioners who had faced historical barriers to access and pedagogic exclusion could now be part of this paradigm through Rule GR7. What did this mean for teaching and learning? Our pedagogic approach was really not about replacing the physical with the online. And I think that's a very important note, that it's not just another way of doing what we did before. Because through online learning, we are able to optimize the learning space beyond bricks and mortar, obviously. Then we're able to include more diverse inputs, bringing cultural diversity and communities within the learning space through their lived and worked experiences. We're able to redefine the flipped classroom and knowledge sources, because even knowledge from communities that was gained and through practice prior to accessing this course was then being acknowledged and included in the curriculum. There was a lot of interdisciplinary engagement due to the online flexibility, which means the school of the built environment, all the disciplines, and we have professors from other disciplines engage with our students because of and through online learning. Importantly, our students had access to and networking with the global knowledge society. It broadened the critical learning community, creating new networks, transforming the community of learning and practice. So this online and blended learning paradigm, which we kind of adapted to in the last few years, disrupted comfort zones, and it redefined our learning community. We had constant challenge and alternative view points from experienced practitioners who are now students. So by including these practitioners that didn't have access before, who are now able to access our programs, they bring in various perspectives due to having lived and experienced and worked in industry in communities, which then posed very progressive challenges to our curriculum and allowed us to recontextualize content. So thereby, this kind of engagement eventually drove and created a more agile curriculum, which is constantly transforming. What this also did, it advanced scholarship of practice and current developments, because it started to, through the student body, a diverse, mature, and kind of generationally diverse body of students. It kind of provoked new thinking about knowledge and about industry and society, because it allowed people that had that experience to come in and challenge the curriculum. So it naturally, this kind of approach disrupted also the power relationships and hierarchies between lecturers and students. And it critically questioned the relevance of current policy and methods that we use in the institution. So the findings through this process was that online learning has had far-reaching consequences beyond its role as just an alternative way of teaching and learning. It is progressively disruptive. It promotes alternative learning pathways while broadening the learning community, and it fuels curriculum and pedagogic transformation. So for us as involved in teaching and learning, are we really prepared for a very different cohort of students and in a very different learning environment moving forward? So what were the implications on practice from moving to an online environment in a discipline like architecture? We managed to overcome barriers of distance and opened up new possibilities for critical collaborative engagement. It allowed numerous possibilities of access to information and learning communities for the upskilling and advancement through unlimited networks of collaboration across geographic and cultural boundaries across the globe even. And it broadened pedagogic opportunities through inclusivity, and it challenged and disrupted institutionalized hegemony. So the lessons that were learned through this, in conclusion, is that various possibilities which were near impossible in physical learning spaces were now possible. And this means that the return now to contact beyond the pandemic won't be a return to what was the old normal. It's going to be a different new normal, which is actually an exciting future and current reality. And for that to be successful, there must be a willingness on our side to challenge our comfort zones, spatio-pedagogically, for pedagogic transformation. And for that to happen and transform society through knowledge, disruption is necessary. So I thank you for listening to my presentation, and I look forward now to your questions. Thank you very much.